We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do us well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button. If you like our content, share the video with your family and your friends. If you want to help support this rebel college football rebel outpost with a kind donation, hit the $ where you make a comment and I'll get you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend. In the comments, with your comments, in the chat room, and with your phone calls later in the show. This Monday, November 4th. Monday, November 4th, we are going to be talking about the football games before coming up this week. Okay, the schedule that is coming up this week. Gonna go through the schedules. Before that, we are gonna talk about how the Big 12, according to the Sports Business Journal, the Big 12 is ahead of the curve in creating a template for the schools in the conference again, I'm so interested to see how these student athletes sign on the dotted line. What is it gonna look like? What is it gonna look like? And are we gonna be able to see it? Are we gonna be able to know what the backup left tackle for BYU, how much is he gonna make within the football salary cap of BYU? And it sounds like it could be different. These contracts, whatever you want to call them, could look different from team to team, program to program within the same conference. We're going to be reading a short article from the Sports Business Journal. But first, before we get to that, and before we get to the scheduled games coming up on week 11, right before I came on live, I did not advertise it. It's not in the title. It's not in the bubble of the fat guy from Minnesota. It's nowhere. But I'm going to give you a Florida State money perch update. Now, it's nothing earth-shattering. It's nothing groundbreaking. But again, we haven't given you an update, and the communication went back and forth, and I was given the okay about 10 minutes ago. And I'm going to just tell you what the Florida State money perch, the update that he's given us. It's nothing like earth-shattering, but it does give us a window to what he and other people believe at Florida State, what would be just a roughed out draft of what it would take. What would it look like? What would it look like if we woke up 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now, and there was a settlement made? He just wanted to highlight something in which he has something that he has been told. And I think it's very interesting. And I guess I really never thought of it this way. We've talked about it, but really he laid it out like, if it happens, this is how it happens. According to the Florida State money perch, if a settlement is made, we're going to do that first. We're going to hit that first. Then we're going to go to the Sports Business Journal article. And then we're going to talk football. Football week 11 scattered with very important games. The Holy War. Utah and BYU. The Holy War. Okay, let's get into it. I want to thank everybody for coming on in. Our web, holy smokes, is in the house. Kay Struthers, John Teal, let's go. Mr. Monkey says, Oklahoma Sooner, Bruce Harris, Boomer, Jeff Jorgensen, what is up, Greg? Charlie Atwood, Amac, Otson, Jimmy, Jeff Olson, the Badgers stink. I need you to stink the very last week of the season, Mr. Olson. That's when you need to stink. The battle for the axe. That's when I need to see the Badgers collapse. For the Gophers to go into Madison and take back the axe. Mr. Monkey says, it's been a while, Greg. I've been busy. Thank you for coming on in, Mr. Monkey says. I do appreciate any time you are in the studio. Preston from Greensboro. Hampton is a beast. No question about it. Running all over, doing everything for the Tar Heels against the Seminoles. Marion Hampton has been doing it for years. for the Tar Heels. Unbelievable career. 4637 Warrior. Finally getting here live. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate it. AMAC is in the house. Sheep in Wolves Clothing. Getting geared up for the big UAP, USP, UFO show. I haven't decided that I'm going to do it. I have not decided that I'm going to do it. I might get in trouble with YouTube. I might get in trouble with all of you. I don't know. I might get in trouble with the little general. Again, November 13th. It might be a very interesting day. I've heard a little bit of steam, a little bit of rumor on who's going to be one of the witnesses coming forward in the congressional hearing. Something about a black triangle, something about an encounter, something about on the ground encounter. I don't know. Allegedly, I don't want to get sued by the United States Department of Defense. I do not want to get sued by the Department of Energy, who's hiding everything. I don't want to get sued by anybody. I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. Just a rumor. Just a rumor. Patrick Bear is in the house. Big 12. Yay, Jay Chapman is here. Mr. Hoosier. Daniel Montcastle. Mr. Hoosier is trying to stay calm. He's trying to stay alert. He's looking both ways. All these attacks coming on the Hoosiers. Who have they played, they say? Well, whoever they played, they have demolished. Of course, Indiana should be in the top 6, top 5. Look, if Indiana were the gray and scarlet, Indiana would be what? Number 2, number 3? With what they've done to the teams they've played? Daniel Montcastle is a happy man, but he's got a whole bunch of weight on his shoulders. A whole bunch of weight on his shoulders. The excitement is high. Holy smokes. CFB plus. Good day, good day. Clinton Moses is in the house. Kenneth Stromness. Go BYU. Where is BYU going to be put tomorrow night in the playoff committee? Where are they going to be slotted in? If you look at BYU's resume, it's real impressive. Now, the resume is different than Indiana's. BYU has beaten a couple ranked teams. Indiana has demolished everybody who they've played. BYU's resume looks pretty favorable. Dare I say it, to Georgia, to Miami. Where is this committee going to put the BYU Cougars tomorrow night? Interesting day ahead. Humble, Bumble, Duck. Hi, Greg. I hope you and LG are well. I hope you are well as well. And thank you for coming into this deep well, this Rebel Outpost College Football's peek around the corner. Stephen McNeely is in the house. Azon the Kid is in the house. Raj Reddy. Greg, let's talk St. Mary's basketball. I'll call you in an hour. I would love to have a discussion about St. Mary's basketball, but number one, I know nothing about St. Mary's basketball. Number two, this is a college football YouTube show. But go ahead, call in, Raj. I got no problem. Call in. Talk about St. Mary's basketball. Stephen Vitt is in the house. I believe that is tomorrow night, Steve. Tomorrow night, Bo Weevil. Hello, guys. Go Clemson. Larry the GM, Mr. Longhorn. Greg is live. Yes, Larry the GM. The Longhorns are slipping a little bit. The Longhorns are slipping a little bit. You're going to be playing Texas A&M at the end of the year, and we got a report that Levon Moss, the RB1 of Texas A&M, is out for the rest of the season due to an injury. Ted Johnson, the great wide receiver of Oregon Ducks, he is not out for the rest of the season. It sounds like he's going to make his way back before the end of the season. The injuries are coming. The injuries are piling up. The injuries could change the whole landscape of the college football playoffs. We saw it last year with Travis Jordan, the quarterback of Florida State, who went out right before the end of the season. None of us are rooting for injuries. They happen. They happen all the time, and it could change what is about that transpire coming into this weekend, coming into the next weekend, going into the playoffs. Jose, USC, is in the house. Nitwit has licked his wounds. He's back in the house. Penn State still controls their own destiny. They just got to get it done. They got to get it done against a Washington team. And then the Nittany Lions are going to have to get it done versus my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers. Steve, Bearcat Steve, is in the house. Still waiting for something, anything from Toledo and the Mountain West situation. I am as well. Ricky, you are my favorite Gopher, and the only one I know. Go Hoosiers. That I never see the day. Ricky, yes, Mr. Tungate, Mr. Hoosier himself. You know, I cannot imagine what Mr. Montcastle and Tungate are going through right now. Every day, tick, 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 tock, tick, 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 tock. The Hoosiers are set up. If they do what everybody's expected that they will accomplish from now on in, 11-1, 11-1 gets the Hoosiers into the playoffs. No question about it. And if they beat the Buckeyes, if the Hoosiers beat the Buckeyes, man, the excitement is unbelievable. Grant Creech is in the house. Thanks for coming on in. Tumasta, Truck Stop Cougars, is here. Lonnie is here. Big 12 needs a TV channel. Marcus Williams is in the house. Bo Weevil's got it. Oregon number 1, Miami number 2, Indiana number 3, BYU number 4, and the Buckeyes number 5. Immaculate is in the house. Okay, so let's start this up. We're going to talk about how the Big 12 is ahead of the curve on creating a template, an NIL agreement template for the universities to look at, to agree on, to use. But they're all going to use different variations. That's what it sounds like. We're going to go through a short article, Sports Business Journal. And then we're going to go into Week 11 games. We're going to go through the schedule, and then we're going to take your phone calls. But first, not advertised, I just want to pass on an information that the Florida State Money Perch gave to us about 10 minutes before we came on live. Nothing nothing like, whoa! But just a heads up on who he has talked to and what they believe, what a certain scenario would look like if it happens. So, not reporting that anything is imminent. We have no idea. But the Florida State Money Perch gave us some information, and we're passing it on to you right now. If we wake up Let's just throw out a date. And again, this date means nothing. I don't have any information on this date. But let's just throw out February 10th, 2025. Okay. We wake up the morning of February 10th, 2025. Again, the date really means nothing. We wake up that morning and we read the news that a settlement has happened between Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC. If we wake up that morning and we hear the news, the Florida State Money Perch is telling us the following. If that happens, when it happens, if a settlement happens, an agreement between the ACC and Florida State and Clemson, he wants to make sure that if it happens, that means a whole bunch of other stuff has also been agreed on. Like, for example, if we wake up on February 10th and there's agreement between Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC, that has also mean, from what he has been being told, that would mean that Florida State and Clemson would have the next step figured out, that this agreement would have been in secret for a certain length of time to give Florida State and Clemson the space, the breathing room to talk to other conferences, Big 10, SEC, Big 12, whatever, some independent possibility, whatever it is, that this agreement would have given them in secret, would have given Florida State and Clemson the space to talk about it with other conferences, to give them the legal window, to give the other conferences the legal window. And if Florida State and Clemson comes up with another avenue to put their programs into a conference or whatever, that they would go back to the ACC and say, okay, we agree to this settlement, how we're going to pay you, the payment plan, whatever. Everything is going to be according to the Florida State Money Perch and those who he's talked to. It would all be wrapped up in a bow. All of it done in secret. What he is telling BTM and the Money Perch, that it ain't going to be like a situation where we wake up on February 10th, and I'm just using that date, 2025, and we read that there's an agreement between Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC, and then we're all saying, now what? There's a $250 million, we're just pretending, a $250 million agreement. Both schools to get out of the ACC. And now they're going to be able to talk with the Big 10 and the SEC, or the Big 12, or potential media partners for an independent deal, whatever. That's not how this is going to go down. According to the Florida State Money Perch and what he's being told by people at Florida State, that's not how if it happens, if there's a window there, if there's a settlement window, if there's a number that they can agree on, Florida State is going to have to go search, talk, first party talks with everybody else to make sure that that exit fee works for them. Pick a number. I don't care what number you use. 250 million, 300 million, whatever, 350 million, 175. Pick a number. Pick a payment plan. Does it have to be paid right away? Does the 50% of it have to be paid right? Do they get 10 years to pay it? Whatever. Whatever the number is, whatever the payment plan is, whatever it is, for Florida State to absolutely agree, they need the space and the time to talk to other entities. The Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, and or some other plan. So if a settlement does happen, according to what Florida State Money Perch has been told, and he's told us, in 10 minutes ago, I got the thumbs up to talk about it. That's why I did not advertise it. Just more proof that this is not a clickbait YouTube channel, because I would have led with this. But I don't do that. If I get something and I get the green light, I get it to you as fast as possible, even if it happens during a live show. That is how it's going to go down. If a settlement does happen, we're going to know it happened, how much, and what is Florida State's plans going forward. They're going to know. I believe from me I don't talk to the Florida State Money Perch directly. I ask questions, the associates, eventually the information comes back to me. Everything that I've heard from the Florida State Money Perch, the chatter behind the curtain, and everywhere else, the chances of any talks, any agreement, any settlement between Florida State and the ACC, and include Clemson in this, any agreement between the two parties, between the three parties, and then Florida State and Clemson shopping themselves, have the freedom to talk to other entities. If all that happens, the chances of any of that leaking before it is announced is basically zero. Like 0.001. This is college football's peek around the corner. I would love to be able to wake up on a February 9th and tell you it's about to happen. Just like we did on August 3rd, before the August 4th of 2023 with Washington and Oregon. Just like July 22, 23, 24, before Colorado, July 27th of 2023. Just like we did on March 31st, 2022, before the USC in June 30th, 2022. You get the point. But if this settlement happens, it's going to come out of the blue. If it happens, it's going to come out of the blue. And the other questions surrounding this settlement, it's all going to be done, because there's no way that Clemson and Florida State are going to settle on any number until they're able to shop their wares, until they are able to have first-party talks, until they're able to say, yes, that number will work for us. And if the number doesn't work for them, if they do not get a bite of the app, if they do not get what they they expect to get from the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12, for whatever reason, doesn't work for them, brother, then they're going to go back to the ACC all in quiet and say, no, that $230 million doesn't work. That $250 million doesn't work. That $300 million doesn't work. Whatever the number is. And we're not going to know about it. It's going to all be done in silence, in secret. But if it does happen, if there's a settlement number that does work for all parties, including wherever Florida State and Clemson are going to go to, then it's all going to open up to us all at once, and it's going to be information flowing out, and that's how it's going to happen. According to the Florida State Money Perch, the people who he has talked with. That is what I want to start the show with. The information, we got about 10 minutes before our live show. It's going to be done in secret until it all explodes. If it explodes. Ryan Willie, this evil Badger, is upset with the Badgers coaching staff. Fickell isn't a good coach. Cincinnati was in a weak conference and an easy schedule. Cincinnati got smoked in the playoff. Well, okay. I understand why you're upset, evil Badger. I get it. And part of the problem is me, because unintentionally, I put the coolness on the Badgers because I thought they were on the upswing. I was wrong. Once again, I was wrong. Wrong about the evil Badgers. Fickell, to me, just my opinion, is a very good coach. I don't think what he's trying to do at Wisconsin is going to work. I mean, it could work, but I don't think it's sustainable. That's the problem. Your QB1 got injured. Your QB2 was not ready. He wasn't. Badgers got a little bit of bad luck, to be honest with you. And then your RB1 goes out for the season. I'm not trying to make excuses. Cincinnati, Fickell did an unbelievable job at Cincinnati. And before that, he had all the credentials in the world. I think Fickell's a good coach. Wisconsin might not be the best fit for him on what he wanted to do, on what he wants to do. That's the question. But I think he's a good coach. But I understand why you're upset, Ryan Willie, because they got the doors blown off from Iowa. Iowa has blown the doors off a few teams this year, including my Golden Gophers. And I don't think the Iowa Hawkeyes are done blowing the doors off of their future opponents if you look at that schedule. Hint, hint, wink, wink, the Cornhuskers, you gotta get that 6th win against the evil Badgers at Lincoln in your 11th game of the season. I don't think you're going to go to the Coliseum and beat USC. Maybe you will, but I don't think so. You're not going to beat Iowa in Iowa City. You're going to have to beat the Badgers at Lincoln to get that 6th win, Nebraska. You got to go bowling this year, or the wheels are going to come out the cart completely if you don't get that 6th win this year. The runway of Matt Rule is starting to shrink. Luke Fickell is going to be back next year for Wisconsin. I don't know if Tyler Van Dyke is going to be back next year. The offensive coordinator, I don't know if he's going to be back next year. Luke Fickell, next year, the seat's going to get a little warm if the Badgers don't climb up the Big Ten rankings. Because for the Badgers, the Badger fans, the incredible fan base, their expectations are pretty dang high. And Luke Fickell is going to have to start meeting them, else the seat will get warm next year, not this year. Thank you for the super chat, Ryan Willie. I appreciate it. Helmer Henderson. Greg jinxed the evil Badgers. But I did not do it intentionally. I do not use my powers for evil. I better use a different word. I don't use my power to do bad. That just comes with me being the loser who sits in the middle of Loserville City, and I am the mayor. That's what happens. I do not intentionally jinx your beloved programs when I pick your programs to do well. Just making Just making sure everybody understands that. Yeah, we talked about it. Mr. Moss, Levon Moss, is out for the season. Okay, now let's get to what we did. Advertise. Thank you, Helmer Henderson. Thank you, Evil Badger, for your generosity, for your donations to help us keep the lights on here. I appreciate it. Sports Business Journal. Ben Portnoy. Sources the Big 12 sharing NIL agreement template with schools. Schools and leagues are working to get a head start on the House settlement related paperwork, and the Big 12 is toward the front of the pack. League sources told Sports Business Journal the Big 12 circulated a name, image, and likeness agreement template to its schools in recent weeks that would effectively spell out, among other things, terms, services, payments, and timing of payments to athletes. Terms, services, payments, and timing of payments to athletes. The template, which remains in its infancy and could undergo significant changes, was also created to allow each school to format it related to its varying needs. Like, for example, whether athletes would sign over the NIL rights exclusively or non-exclusively to the university. Sources told Sports Business Journal the document is currently rather unwieldy at around 20 pages, and staffers are working to parse down the information to be more digestible. It's not going to be short. Even if we pare it down, one Big 12 source told SBJ, you're just going to have to be like a real estate agent. This means this means this, and this is what you're interested in. The Big 12's circulating of this potential template comes after Judge Claudia Wilkin granted preliminary approval of the House settlement last month. The proposed settlement would grant schools the ability to share revenue directly with athletes, along with creating a system that would provide the NCAA and a third-party entity some level of oversight over the payment of players. Schools around the country are largely planning for a world in which athletes may well sign multiple agreements with each institution. Schools around the country are largely planning for a world in which athletes may well sign multiple agreements with each institution. Those contracts could entail, but aren't limited to, agreements related to the house payments, scholarships, and NIL that would be based on fair market value. So one of those agreements could be with the $20.5 million salary cap, right? You sign an agreement. You say, I'm going to play for 2 years, 3 years. I'm going to make $220,000 as the punter for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then you're going to be possibly signing another agreement with the NIL. Iowa's NIL. Maybe you're going to be signing over your exclusive NIL rights, your name, image, and likeness rights to a collective outside of the $20.5 million salary cap. Are you going to commingle the scholarship agreement with the house payment? Are you going to keep those two separate? I don't think, a Big 12 source, I don't think you're going to see institutions all do it one way or the other. And we've been talking about this at Peek Around the Corner. These athletic departments and how they're going to handle all this, where they decide where they put their money, what do they invest in within the football roster, within the other sports, and how they're going to do it. What type of agreements are they going to make? These athletic departments are going to look so much different from each other. And I hope and I pray and I hope and I pray because, first of all, because I do a college football YouTube channel. I hope and I pray that a lot of this information, or at least some of this information, is transparent, that we can see it, so we can talk about it, so we can debate it, so we can disagree with each other. That's what I'm hoping. The larger hope among administrators is the settlement will show enough progress to Congress that it might step in to create some kind of wider national NIL standard that would circumvent the patchwork of state laws that currently govern the matter. College sports leaders also desire congressional help in creating an antitrust carve-out that would allow athletes to collectively bargain without being deemed employees. Federal law does not allow non-employees to collectively bargain. Opponents of the settlement, however, argue its implementation would functionally create a collective bargaining agreement without the input of the athletes. And finally, in this article, we oppose the settlement. The conferences and the schools that have done a masterful job of throwing out breadcrumbs for the media long before the settlement was actually made public and analyzed. An executive director, National College Players Association. There's a lot of cheerleading around it right now, but the reality is that this would be terrible for the athletes. The Big 12, for its efforts, is working to get ahead of the NIL template agreement curve. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. There was a lot of information there. And again, nothing is settled. Nothing is agreed upon. Just the Big 12 trying to create this template for their universities to use. But these universities are going to do all, what Cincinnati does may not be exactly what UCF does. Interesting days ahead. Interesting days ahead. Mr. Flugar, sorry I am late. No problems. I'm glad you came on in. Again, we come on in at any time during the day. You got to keep your head on a swivel, and I understand. I just so humbled that people would spend their time with this, with our program, with our community. Appreciate it. Laura Weiss, the Red Raider, wreck 'em. Expedition Greg, Texas Tech did wreck the Iowa State Cyclones. I am good and relieved that the Buckeyes got a huge win. That offensive line problem might have been solved. Tony Lawson, USC is very beatable for Nebraska. The serial killer, NU had their shot with UCLA and totally blew it. Helmer Henderson, Iowa is fun to watch this year. Caleb Johnson is a beast. Absolute beast. Keep chopping. USC is the best 4-5 team in the country. Don't sleep on them, Husk. I agree. As stupid as it sounds, I agree. I don't think the Cornhuskers are going to win in the Coliseum. 2 weeks from now, they don't play next week. Cornhuskers got to bye. The Cornhuskers are going to have to get that 6th win against their nemesis, the Wisconsin Badgers. in Lincoln. That's where they're going to have to get it. That is where they're going to have to get it. Okay. Helmer Henderson, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think Helmer's talking about me jinxing the evil Badgers. Thank you, Helmer Henderson. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your statement. Appreciate it very much. Okay. You are what your record says you are. 4-5. USC may be watching bowl season from the classroom. That's a good point. They very well could be. I think they're going to beat Nebraska. But we shall see. Maybe I'm putting the jinx on USC, and now I'm going to elevate Nebraska to get their 6th win. Okay, let's talk about, before we get to your phone calls, in relation to what the Money Perch said, or what SBJ said, or the schedule for this week, whatever you want to talk about, we're going to open up the phone lines after we go through the Week 11 games. Let's first go through the ACC. California Wake Forest, Friday, November 8th. Both schools have got 4 wins. Both schools need 2 more wins to get to a bowl game. Miami against Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech is probably going to be able to score on Miami. Right? But it ain't going to matter. It's not going to matter. Because you can't stop Miami. Nobody can stop Miami. Georgia Tech's got a pretty good, decent team. Jamal Haynes is probably going to get some yards. Now, they're not a great passing team. And that's where Miami's weakness is in the secondary. But then again, Duke, Malik Murphy hasn't been great this year at passing. His first year as a full-time starter. So Malik Murphy is developing. But then suddenly Malik Murphy goes crazy on the Hurricanes. But in the end, it doesn't matter. Because nobody can stop Cam Ward. Especially in the second half. When the Hurricanes are down, that's when Cam Ward lights it up. On the surface, Georgia Tech has got a shot to pull the upset. But in reality, Miami's just going to score pretty much every time they touch the ball in the second half because that's what the Hurricanes do. And that is why Cam Ward is number 1 on the PATC Heisman watch list. Syracuse, Boston College, Clemson, Virginia Tech, both teams lost a game that absolutely crushes them. 2 teams coming off of very disappointing losses. We'll see what happens. Duke, North Carolina State, Florida State, Notre Dame. The way that Notre Dame is playing, this is going to be an NBC night game. Florida State, Notre Dame. I don't know, man. I think it's probably going to be... Name your score, Irish. Name your score. At the beginning of the season, this was going to be a very important game. Notre Dame could lose this game at home, but now Florida State has collapsed. Virginia, Pittsburgh coming off a very disappointing big blowout to SMU. Can they gather themselves? Can they win this game against Virginia? That is the ACC. Again, we're going to go to your phone calls after we go through the games, the big games here in Week 11, the Big 12. Starting off with West Virginia, Cincinnati, West Virginia coming off a bye. Cincinnati 5-3, 3-2. West Virginia, 4-4, 3-2. The Cincinnati Bearcats are one win away from being bowl eligible. That would be a good accomplishment for Satterfield, second-year head coach for the Bearcats, and West Virginia might be one loss away from Neil Brown receiving big heat for the Mountaineers. West Virginia has got to finish strong. Iowa State, Kansas. Again, Iowa State, one of the 4 teams, top 25 teams that lost last week to an unrated football team. Iowa State loses to Texas Tech 23-22. Now they got to go on the road to Lawrence, Kansas. Can they gather themselves? Can they get themselves together? They need to win this game. It might be closer than what I think many believe. Colorado and Texas Tech. Holy smokes. The Colorado Buffaloes, who I just yesterday projected to get into the college football playoffs as the Big 12 champion. A hand grenade that I threw into the arena. And now they play Texas Tech. Big, massive game for Mr. Coach Sanders, Mr. Coach McGuire, Tyler Shuck, Mr. Shedeur Sanders. Holy smokes. I'm going to be watching that game. I am going to be watching that game. Colorado at Texas Tech. UCF at Arizona State. Mr. Cam Scatterboot just read a report before we came on live. Scatterboot is not, it sounds like he's not playing against UCF. Sounds like Scatterboot is out for this Saturday. Oklahoma State versus TCU. TCU has been losing a lot of close games. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. The Holy War. PATC. PATC is planning to do a watch party for this game. I still don't quite have my schedule cleared for this. But I'm going to try to make it happen. Watch party, BYU, Utah, the Holy War. Utah, disappointing season, would absolutely love to put a chip in to the BYU resume and beat BYU. Salt Lake City. Wow. What a game. What an absolute massive game in the Big 12 and across the country. The Big 10. Friday, we've got the Iowa Hawkeyes. Caleb Johnson, Mr. Sullivan. The Hawkeyes blowing the doors off of everybody. But they're going to travel to Pasadena, the Rose Bowl, UCLA. UCLA has been playing pretty good. Now, UCLA don't have much of a running game, except when their quarterback is running it for 57 yards on a carry against the Cornhuskers. But Ethan Garbers has been throwing the ball really good. Really good. He's talented. They got a couple guys, Studevant. They've got a couple guys, receivers, who can make some plays. Iowa going to travel to Pasadena. We'll see what happens. It could be an interesting game. Iowa, UCLA, Purdue against the Buckeyes. Fox. Unfortunately, this game's going to be over by the first quarter. The Buckeyes against the Spoilermakers. Minnesota, NBC. An NBC 12 noon Eastern game, as NBC has the Notre Dame game against Florida State. Minnesota going to Piscataway looking to win their 5th Big Ten game in a row. And I think the line is 6.5. We shall see. Minnesota got a little nicked up against Illinois. Illinois really hit the Gophers, smacked them all around. I think the Gophers have some contusions going in at Rutgers. We'll see what happens. I believe Rutgers is coming off a bye, so they should be fresh. Michigan, Indiana. Michigan struggling, but this could make their year if they go into Indiana and beat them. CBS, 3:30 Eastern time, and the Hoosiers are licking their chops. For all the years that Michigan has smashed the Hoosiers, this is revenge time for the Hoosiers. And if Indiana wins this game, think about it. If Indiana wins this game, they are a victory against Purdue from going to the football playoffs. And they're going to beat Purdue. Myself, son of Sarek, Spirit Cat Steve, Immaculate, 11 of us, we could possibly beat Purdue. We'd only be about a 10-point underdog at West Lafayette. So, this is the game. The Buckeyes are not going to push Indiana out of the playoffs if the Buckeyes beat Indiana. Of course not. So, ladies and gentlemen, if Indiana beats Michigan, they're in. They are in the playoffs. Let me know how wrong I got it, but that's how I see it. Maryland versus Oregon. Oregon's going to feast on the Terrapins. Secondary. Oregon's about to go 10-0. Washington, Penn State. Okay, Penn State, you got to gather yourself. You're just like Iowa State, right? You got to gather yourself. A tough loss. But now you got to beat the Washington Huskies, who just came off a win against USC. So many big games. Holy smokes. And then you got the SEC. Florida, Texas. Now, Florida, down to their third string quarterback. Probably won't give Texas much of a game. But the next one, Georgia at Ole Miss. Holy smokes. Ole Miss puts up, 63 against Arkansas? Something like that. My goodness. Okay. Lane Kiffin, this is the game. This is the game to make your mark. You have pushed Ole Miss, the Rebels program, to new heights. But if you want to get to the playoffs, this is the game where you make your mark. This is it, Ole Miss. This is it. Against Georgia. Beat Georgia. And we're going to be talking about Ole Miss getting into the playoffs, not Tennessee, not LSU. Ole Miss is going to squeeze ahead of them if they beat Georgia, in my opinion. South Carolina, Vanderbilt. Holy smokes. Two teams that are having a great season. My goodness. And Mississippi State and Tennessee. Mississippi State's a good team for Tennessee to play this week because the Volunteers are dipping, slipping, sliding. They're not playing good football right now. I know they're ranked number 7 in the country. I know they're 7-1. I know they're 4-1 in the SEC, but they're dipping, slipping, sliding, and Mississippi State might cure them a little bit, might get a little bit more momentum. Tennessee's got to get themselves ready for the last game of the season, playing at Vanderbilt. Their whole season could be spoiled by Vanderbilt. And then Alabama, LSU. The elimination game. Whoever loses this game is out. Whoever wins this game might sneak in, might get in. Now, LSU Tiger fans are saying, yeah, if we run the table, if we beat Alabama, we're definitely in. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Alabama's saying the same thing. If we beat LSU, run the table, all we got is Auburn, blah, blah, blah. We are in. We shall see. Oklahoma, Missouri finishes off the SEC. Now, we're going to get to your phone calls. We're going to get to your phone calls and your comments. A big Week 11. A huge Week 11. Would be funny if Washington beat Penn State unwatched on Peacock. I watch Peacock. I watch the games on Peacock. Washington State beat Penn State. It could happen. It could happen. Penn State's got to recover. Penn State cannot allow the Buckeyes to beat them twice. Thank you, Helmer Henderson, for the super chat. Appreciate it. All right, let's get to your phone calls. Let's get to your phone calls here. I need to open it up. Phone line is open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Again, the Big 12 is ahead of the curve, according to SBJ, on creating an NIL agreement template with their universities or institutions in the Big 12. We went through that article. We also went through what the Money Perch said at Florida State and how, if a settlement does happen, if it happens, how it's going to look like. How does the news break according to what he's been told at Florida State? And then we just went through the schedule, 11-week schedule. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we're going to be making our picks against the spread. Making our picks against the spread. And of course, some of the big games that we went through here in Week 11 are going to be part of our selections.
From
Immaculate.
Immaculate is in the house. Thanks for calling, Mr. Hawkeye. The floor is yours.
Hey, Greg, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm all, going through those games, man. It just gets me hyped up. It gets me every week. There's been at least 4, 5, 6 games that are really important now that we have the expanded playoffs. Last year they would not be important, but now they are because of the expanded playoffs. I love it.
I agree. I think this might be one of the most fun college football seasons I've actually experienced so far.
Yep.
It's kind of hard to say because how much detail do we remember back? But having this at the end, I do believe it's a benefit, having more postseason opportunities for more schools. In terms of that NIL situation, I really don't know what to make of that, other than it really seems like they're feeling pretty comfortable. Would you say? Like, you're probably not going this far and starting to direct people in which direction to go and what to do if you didn't think that settlement was being passed and some of the governance involved with it. Would you think?
Yeah. You still got to get, everything's got to become official first, right? So,
but it's the same.
Yeah.
The judge is given a preliminary approval, and it's the same judge that gives final approval.
Yep. Yeah.
There's some people like, well, it's a different standard it has to reach. It's like, come on. Like, it's the same judge. She's been putting down objection after objection. So it kind of feels like everyone is just ready to move through this. In terms of the FSU information, that's kind of a duty you just got thrown at you. I honestly didn't expect hear anything about realignment much at all this season. I really kind of thought that they were focusing in on the first 12 team.
But wait, he's not saying anything about it actually happening. He says if it does happen.
And with you saying February, that's well after.
That date means nothing. I was just trying to put up a date so you could pretend we wake up on this date. So I don't want anybody to miss. We're not breaking any news except for if there is a settlement. There's going to be way more information attached to it. It's just not going to be a settlement. Like, here's the number. Now, is Florida State going to pay it or not pay it? Where are they going? All that supposedly would be decided, and then they would sign the agreement. That's what he's being told. So it's interesting that he told us now, but there is no news like, is it going to have, we don't have any steam. And we're told that this ain't going to be no leaks on this. If it happens, if it goes down, all this stuff's going to be done behind closed doors, and then we're all going to find out together, and it's going to be shocking news if it happens.
Yeah, general rule, when it gets quiet, that doesn't mean nothing's happened. It kind of tends to mean the opposite. Like, whatever, they've had their fight, their battle, their court case, things going on. For whatever reason, it's gotten so quiet. One, that's part of the season, but it's not, I don't think it's entirely due to that. I honestly believe that they've probably now been able to come to some kind of terms, and I do believe that the house settlement situation is a big part of that. You kind of need to know going forward some of that. That could affect some other things as well, that maybe the ACC kind of knows, okay, we know what we want to do going forward. And if FSU and Clemson don't want to be part of that, we couldn't really just let them go before because we had to know some things. But they're not going to let them out for cheap. Like, I still would highly read it. You probably would agree, considering some of the numbers you were saying, I think. It's still going to be a big pile of cash.
Yeah, and I was, again, just throwing out numbers just to make it so, I have no information.
Even if it's just $100 million each, like that's a considerable amount of money to build off of. And once they do give that type of a settlement to get out, you really can't turn around to other schools and say no. You can't. Like, it's just that would be an easy case to win.
And I think the main point which the Money Perch was trying to tell us is, Florida State and Clemson they're definitely not gonna agree to any settlement number. There might be like a preliminary agreement to say, hey, okay, that's the number, okay. We might sign that agreement. We might give you that money. We might do this, ACC. But now you got to give us the space to be able to talk, to have first party talks with our lawyers. And that you all be okay with that, with the Big Ten, with the SEC, with the Big 12, or whatever, any other media partner that might give us an independent deal. Whatever it is, there is going to be no agreement to a settlement unless Florida State and Clemson know for sure that it's worth it to them to do it, right? So that is what he's conveying to us. It's like, and all this is going to be done in secret. If it's going on, it's all going to be done in secret. And then if it happens, and it's a big if, but if the settlement happens, we're not going to just learn that there's a settlement. We're going to learn everything, like all at once, because it's all going to be done. But it's a big if, right? I mean, and again, and I agree with you, like whatever number that is, if other schools find it worthy for them to pay it, then, they're going to have to be allowed to pay it. This is another reason why it's so important for Florida State and Clemson. If there's a settlement, they're the two schools that are going to be able to talk first, right, with outside entities. to see if that number if they can make that number work, that settlement number. So that is the advantage of those two schools going to court. But that is the framework of what we're being told. If it happens, if that's how it happens. We're all going to learn all of it at once together, and it's all going to be done in secret. All these steps.
Yeah, which is really a whole lot more complicated than I think people might realize. Because, as you've been talking about, we've talked about.
Yeah.
I still think the Big Ten is going to look at this and go, well, we need to know what Notre Dame's doing.
Yeah.
And I think the SEC is looking at UNC saying, we're not getting involved until we know they're coming.
Yeah, and that's what makes it tough. That's what makes it tough for Florida State and Clemson. It's tough. It's yeah.
So, still my opinion, and it's still just complete conjecture, but I do believe that there's a faction in the ACC that wants to create something afterwards. If they didn't, you're probably not making a settlement with your top two money programs at this point if they don't have some other kind of plan. I don't care what the deal is, how much money it is. It opens up to renegotiations with ESPN. So they need to have some kind of plan going forward so that ESPN doesn't maybe pull that. So if this is true, big if, I think they got something going. And I tend to think that if Notre Dame really wanted to be in the Big Ten, they would not have signed that extension with NBC. And they would have probably been at the front of this. And if you look at a school like Stanford, who's rumored to be with them, their exit from the ACC has to be little or nothing. I mean, they're making nothing.
Yeah.
So for them, they could easily go with them. So if these are the ones that are going and there's a settlement, for me, I feel a little bit stronger that those schools may actually have another plan. And if that's the case, and if what you're saying is right, then, the likes of Big Ten, they would know, right? They would know. And Notre Dame would be like, no, we're staying. We're not coming over there. Move on. If that happens, that's when I could see Florida State get looked at by the Big Ten. But I still don't believe that they would grab both. I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like they'd grab Florida State, possibly sit at 19, wait for, the next round of ACC schools to get their deal. Because, once these guys leave and go somewhere else, the other schools can say the ACC has been weakened in value. They can possibly argue a smaller settlement, because most of them probably can't, maybe not afford as much. So, yeah, I think you're right. Like, it really helps everyone out if those schools know where they're going right away. And it all just happens, and then everyone can figure out the next round after that. But I don't know. Like I said, they have to have some other kind of plan. Otherwise, you're not letting them go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I know folks aren't going to agree with that fully, but
yeah. All right, man. I appreciate it, Mr. Caleb Johnson, the Caleb Johnson of the PATC community. I appreciate your call, sir.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk to you later. You have a good one.
Yeah. Beautiful. I almost screwed up. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Give me a moment. I got to check my... Helmer Henderson. Do the Hoosiers have the lines to compete with Ohio State? Great question. We're going to find that out. We're going to find that out. Great question. They've got the, how do I say this? They've got guys on that team, man, and they're all bought in, and they have the offensive system, which everybody knows where they're supposed to be at all times. There's no confusion. There's no pre-snap penalties. Rourke knows exactly where all the receivers are going to be. He processes the field. Some of those receivers get separation. That Sarak guy, Ellison's a beast running. They've got weapons all over the place, and the defense has been more than holding up. Now, again, do they have the lines to compete with the Buckeyes? And I'm not going to sit here and say automatically yes. We're going to learn, though, against Michigan, because Michigan does, I know they're struggling, but on the line of scrimmage, they still got guys, especially in the middle of that defensive line. So we're going to find out, I think we're going to get a good glimpse. Can the Hoosiers stay even with the Wolverines at the line of scrimmage? If they can stay even, it's the old saying, if you even Steven, then they're winning. If the Hoosiers are even at the line of scrimmage with the Wolverines, then they're winning. There is nothing that I have seen that tells me that the Hoosiers can't compete with the Buckeyes. We saw the Cornhuskers compete with the Buckeyes, and the Hoosiers blew the doors off the Cornhuskers. So there's nothing that tells me that the Hoosiers can't compete with the Buckeyes. Who did I see come in here? Where is he? I saw him in here. Richard L. It's been so long since I had late season nervousness. Richard L., did you see my show last night? Did you see my live show yesterday? Mr. Buffalo Richard L.? Did you? Well, if you did not see it, let me show you. Let me show you something here. Hold on, buckle up, brace for impact. This was my PATC Chalk Talk. My playoff projections. No, not my projections. What I believe that the committee is going to talk about Tuesday night. Their selections. No, this is my playoff projections from what I see eventually what will happen. Now I'm going to change this next week, depending on the results this week. But my projections are not projections of tomorrow night, but of 4 weeks from now, after the conference championship games. Okay, so number one, I got the Buckeyes being number one when the playoffs begin, because I think they're going to beat Michigan. I think they're going to beat the Hoosiers. I think they're going to beat the Ducks in the Big Ten championship game. The Buckeyes, number one seed. Georgia, number two. I think they're going to run the table. They've got landmines in front of them. I think they're going to be number two. Number three, Miami, ACC champions. But this is where you got to pay attention. Richard L., Mr. Buffalo in the comment section. Number four, I've got Colorado. I got them beating Texas Tech. I got them running the table. I've got the Cyclones losing this week or the last week against the Wildcats because the Cyclones did not show me what they needed to show me against the Red Raiders. So therefore, I've got Colorado defeating BYU in the Big 12 championship game. I love BYU. They're playing great. Fantastic season. I'm going to go ahead and take Shedeur Sanders under the spotlight against Jake Rasloff. It's going to be great, incredible, but I got the Buffaloes as the Big 12 champions. Then I got Oregon, 12-1. Losing in the Big Ten championship game, getting the 5th seed. I've got Texas losing to Georgia in the SEC championship, getting the 6th seed. I've got BYU losing the Big 12 championship, being the 7th seed. I got the 3 teams who lose their conference championships, 5, 6, and 7. Number 8, I got Indiana. Indiana, their only loss is the number 1 Buckeyes, but I can't put them ahead of BYU, Texas, or Oregon. Am I crazy? I probably am. Let me know in the chat room. Number 9, Notre Dame. Number 10, Penn State. Again, their only loss in the season against the Buckeyes, and they're number 10. That's crazy. But they haven't had the blowout wins like Notre Dame. I know Notre Dame has the much worse loss. No, I mean, it can't be more. Look, I get it if you want to do-si-do the 2 teams. But I also got in the back of my mind that Penn State is probably going to struggle against Washington. And I think Penn State, that game against the Golden Gophers, which might be in November, might be a night game, because the Gophers are one of the few teams that would allow a night game in November, and Penn State is one of those teams that want night games in November. They wanted that against the Buckeyes. Look, if Penn State and Minnesota both agree, that game will probably be played on Monday night, November 23rd. We'll see if they both agree. Anyways, Tennessee, number 11. Number 12, Boise State. I got Tennessee and LSU. Tight. Just missed. LSU, Iowa State, Kansas State, SMU, Clemson, Army, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, all at 9-3. All those teams I got just missed. Again, this is projections at what it's going to be at the start of the playoffs. And, of course, I will make changes to it after this week's games. Let me know how crazy I am, how wrong I got it. But Richard L. Look, Richard L. Richard L., I need some Rolaids. Yes, you're going to need some Rolaids, my friend. You're going to need some Rolaids. The pressure is on. The pressure is on. All right. Phone lines are now back open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Didn't Lane just get a 1-year added to his Ole Miss contract when he won his 7th game? He's always getting that. It doesn't mean he's going to stay. They're always extending. He's got a contract much like Stoops does at Kentucky. Always extending him. And our PJ Fleck, he's always getting extended. It ain't going to keep him from leaving if there's a better opportunity out there. Gotta go. Greg, thanks for coming on in. Mr. Monkey says, Immaculate's gotta go. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate it. Immaculate says Nebraska had the lines. Nebraska's offensive line stinks. And they have stunk for 3 or 4 years. And they're the same offensive linemen that has been there for 3 or 4 years. That's one of the problems of Nebraska. That old line is horrible. That's why Dylan Raiola, they can't chuck the ball downfield. That's why they're doing all these screens, because their fan base keeps complaining. That's why Raiola's fluttering the ball. He knows he's going to get hit. The offensive line, the running is horrible. The offensive line stinks. The Nebraska's defensive line is good. The defense is good and all that. It is a good thing that the Cornhuskers are losing that experienced offensive line because they're not any good. They're experienced. They played a lot of games, a lot of snaps, a lot of reps. They're just not any good. Not any good. All right, guys. I think we're going to call it. Interesting show. I appreciate you all coming on in. Again, we talked about SBJ, Sports Business Journal, on the article of the Big 12 and Brett Yormark. We talked about our projections once again, PATC of the playoffs, and we talked about the Florida State money perch, giving us a little bit of a window of what it would look like if we all woke up and there was an agreement in place, a settlement in place. What would it all entail? So if you missed it, go back to the beginning of our live show. Pretty interesting information. And then we went through the games of week 11. Tomorrow we're going to make our picks against the spread. And on and on and on until we get to this magical week 11. A lot of drama. The Holy War, Alabama, LSU, games all over the place. Buckle up. Brace for impact. Thank you all for coming on in. Thank you for the donations that help us keep the lights on. Thank you, Immaculate, for the phone calls, the chats in the chat room. Until next time, which is tomorrow. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's Peek Around the Corner to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.